Your brain ages every single day. That is normal. But for millions of seniors over 65, their brain is aging at 2, 3, even 4 times the normal rate. And the warning signs are already visible right now in how you think, how you sleep, how you feel, and how you move. I have been practicing neurology for 22 years. In the next 19 minutes, I will show you 6 specific signs that your brain is aging too fast and exactly what to do to slow it down. Before the 6 signs, you need to understand what accelerated brain aging actually means because it is not the same as dementia, and understanding the difference is what makes early intervention so powerful. Normal brain aging involves gradual, predictable changes that occur across all adults over time. Processing speed slows slightly. Recall of specific names and words becomes occasionally less immediate. Multitasking becomes marginally more effortful. These changes are universal, gradual, and do not significantly impair daily function. Accelerated brain aging is something different. It is the process where specific biological mechanisms, inflammation, oxidative stress, vascular damage, toxic protein accumulation, and metabolic dysfunction drive brain changes at a rate significantly faster than the biological clock alone would produce. The brain of a 68-year-old who is experiencing accelerated aging may show biological characteristics more typical of a 78 or 80-year-old brain on imaging. The critical difference between accelerated brain aging and dementia is this: accelerated brain aging is a process, a rate of change. Dementia is an outcome, a level of impairment. Accelerated brain aging is the road. Dementia is the destination at the end of that road. And intervening on the road, slowing the rate of brain aging, is far more effective than trying to reverse a destination already reached. A study published in Nature Aging used machine learning to analyze brain imaging data from over 45,000 adults and found that biological brain age, what the brain looks like on imaging relative to what it should look like at a given chronological age, varied by as much as 20 years among adults of the same chronological age. A 70-year-old could have a brain that looked 60 on imaging or a brain that looked 80, depending on lifestyle factors, metabolic health, and vascular health. 20 years of difference from factors that are modifiable. The 6 signs I'm about to describe are the functional and behavioral manifestations of this accelerated biological brain aging. They are visible and feelable consequences of a brain that is changing faster than it should, and recognizing them early while the road is still long is what makes meaningful intervention possible. Warning sign 1: processing speed has noticeably slowed. Think about how quickly your mind works compared to 5 years ago. When someone asks you a question, do you answer with the same speed and confidence you used to? When you need to make a quick decision in traffic, in a store, in a conversation, does your mind feel slower to generate the response? Processing speed, the rate at which your brain can receive information, interpret it, and generate a response to awe is one of the earliest and most sensitive measures of brain aging. It is also one of the most consistently underappreciated because it declines gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, and is almost always attributed to fatigue, stress, or simply getting older. But processing speed is not just an abstract cognitive measure. It is the foundation of virtually every practical cognitive function. Reading speed depends on it. Driving safety depends on it. Following conversations depends on it. Managing finances depends on it. And when it begins declining at an accelerated rate, it represents a measurable change in the fundamental efficiency of neural communication throughout the brain. The mechanism behind processing speed decline involves the integrity of white matter, the insulation coating the long fibers that connect different brain regions. Healthy white matter, made of a substance called myelin, allows electrical signals to travel rapidly between brain areas. When white matter degrades from vascular damage, inflammation, or metabolic stress, signal transmission slows. The brain can still perform all its functions, but it does so more slowly. A study published in the journal Neuropsychology followed adults over 65 for 10 years and found that those who showed faster than expected decline in processing speed were significantly more likely to develop dementia within the follow up period, even when their performance on memory tests remained normal. Processing speed was a more sensitive early warning of accelerating brain aging than memory performance. The question to ask yourself honestly is not whether your processing speed is slower than a 30-year-old. It is whether your processing speed is noticeably slower than your own baseline Tom than yourself 5 years ago in ways that go beyond what a few poor nights of sleep or a stressful week would explain. Warning sign two: sleep quality has significantly changed. Has your sleep changed significantly over the past year or two? Not just in duration, but in quality. Do you wake frequently during the night? Do you feel unrested despite spending adequate hours in bed? Do you dream less vividly than you used to? Do you fall asleep easily in the evening but wake far too early in the morning, unable to return to sleep? As I discussed in my sleep video, poor sleep is both a cause and a consequence of accelerated brain aging, and the relationship is bidirectional and self reinforcing in a way that makes it one of the most important warning signs on this list. The brain aging consequence of poor sleep is primarily mediated through the glymphatic system, the brain's cleaning mechanism that I have described in several previous videos. The glymphatic system activates during deep, slow wave sleep, using the cerebrospinal fluid to flush toxic proteins, including amyloid beta and tau, the proteins that accumulate in Alzheimer's disease, out of brain tissue. When sleep is fragmented, when deep, slow wave sleep is reduced, when REM sleep is disrupted, glymphatic cleaning is impaired. Amyloid accumulates faster than it is cleared. And this accumulation, occurring silently, nightly, year after year of poor sleep, directly drives the accelerated brain aging that increases dementia risk. But here's the bidirectional component that makes this sign so significant. The brain regions that regulate sleep, particularly the hypothalamus, the brainstem, and the basal forebrain, are among the earliest sites of neurodegeneration in Alzheimer's disease and related conditions. Early neurodegeneration in these sleep regulating regions impairs sleep quality, which then accelerates neurodegeneration in the rest of the brain, which further impairs sleep quality, creating a cycle that compounds itself over years. A study published in Science found that even a single night of sleep deprivation produced a measurable increase in amyloid beta levels in the human brain, and that the increase correlated with the degree of sleep disruption. Over years of consistently poor sleep, this nightly accumulation translates to significantly accelerated amyloid burden and faster brain aging. Track your sleep honestly. Fragmented sleep, reduced deep sleep, early morning awakening, or significantly reduced dream recall. Any of these patterns persisting for weeks or months warrants physician evaluation for sleep apnea, circadian rhythm disruption, and emerging neurological change. Warning sign three: mood changes, increased anxiety, or apathy. Have you noticed a change in your mood over the past year? Not necessarily depression in the classic sense, but a subtle shift toward greater anxiety, greater irritability, or greater apathy, reduced motivation, reduced interest in activities, reduced emotional engagement with things that used to matter to you? Mood changes in seniors over 65 are almost universally attributed to life circumstances, loss of loved ones, health challenges, retirement adjustments, social isolation, and sometimes these attributions are correct. But there is a neurobiological dimension to mood changes in older adults that is frequently missed. Mood changes as a direct early manifestation of accelerated brain aging. Two specific mood patterns are particularly significant as brain aging warning signs. The first is increased anxiety, specifically a new or worsening pattern of worry, apprehension, or hypervigilance that is disproportionate to actual life circumstances. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is a structure that can become dysregulated early in the neurodegeneration process. When amygdala function is altered by accumulating pathology or by vascular changes affecting the frontal lobe circuits that regulate it, the result is heightened threat sensitivity. The world seems more threatening. Worry becomes more prominent. Anxious rumination increases. This is not psychological weakness, it is the amygdala losing its regulatory brakes. The second is apathy, what I described in my dementia warning signs video as prodromal apathy, a reduction in motivation, emotional engagement, and goal directed behavior that reflects early disruption of the frontal limbic circuits involved in reward and motivation. The person is not sad, they are flat. Things that used to generate enthusiasm generate nothing. Plans that used to be made are not made, a subtle withdrawal from engagement with life. A study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that apathy, measured as a distinct syndrome separate from depression, predicted conversion to dementia with significant accuracy over a 5 year follow up period, and that the predictive power of apathy was independent of cognitive test performance, meaning apathy predicted brain aging acceleration even in people whose memory and thinking appeared normal on standard tests. If you or a family member have noticed new or worsening anxiety or apathy, particularly in the context of other signs on this list, mention this specifically to your physician, framing it as a potential neurological concern, not merely an emotional or psychological one. Warning, sign 4, increasing difficulty with multitasking. Think about your ability to handle multiple things simultaneously compared to a few years ago. Can you carry on a conversation while preparing a meal as easily as you used to? Can you follow a television drama while also keeping track of another task? Can you switch between different tasks, from cooking to answering a question to returning to cooking as fluidly as before? Multitasking difficulty, the increasing inability to efficiently divide attention between simultaneous tasks or to switch smoothly between sequential tasks, is one of the most functionally significant early signs of accelerated brain aging. And it is one of the most consistently misattributed to simply being busy or stressed rather than recognized as a neurological warning. The brain structures responsible for multitasking and task switching are concentrated in the prefrontal cortex, the most recently evolved and most metabolically demanding region of the human brain. The prefrontal cortex is also one of the regions most vulnerable to the vascular damage, inflammatory stress, and metabolic disruption that drive accelerated brain aging. When these insults accumulate, prefrontal function is among the first to show functional consequences. What makes multitasking particularly sensitive as a brain aging measure is that it requires the coordination of multiple high level cognitive processes simultaneously: working memory, attention allocation, task inhibition, and goal maintenance. When any one of these processes is degraded by accelerating brain pathology, multitasking performance suffers. A study from the University of California, San Francisco used functional MRI to examine brain activation patterns during multitasking in adults over 60. They found that older adults who reported subjective multitasking difficulty showed measurably different prefrontal activation patterns with less efficient neural resource allocation compared to those who reported no difficulty, and that the degree of inefficiency correlated with white matter integrity, directly linking multitasking difficulty to the same white matter changes that predict cognitive decline. The question is not whether multitasking is harder at 70 than at 40. It is for virtually everyone. The question is whether multitasking ability has noticeably declined for you over recent years, and whether that decline is affecting your daily functioning in ways you have started noticing and compensating for. Warning, sign 5, increased sensitivity to noise and stimulation. Have you noticed that you are less tolerant of background noise than you used to be? That you find it harder to concentrate in environments with competing sounds or visual stimulation? That busy environments, crowded restaurants, family gatherings with multiple conversations, places with background music feel more draining and more disorienting than they did previously? This increasing sensory sensitivity, sometimes called stimulus overload, is a specific and underrecognized sign of reduced cognitive reserve and accelerated brain processing efficiency decline. Here is the neurological mechanism. Your brain constantly filters environmental stimulation, suppressing irrelevant sensory information so that attention can be directed to what matters. This filtering is an active cognitive process requiring significant prefrontal resources. In a brain with abundant cognitive reserve and efficient neural processing, this filtering operates automatically and effortlessly. As brain aging accelerates and prefrontal resources are reduced, the filtering mechanism becomes less efficient. More irrelevant stimulation gets through. The brain must work harder and more consciously to maintain focus in stimulating environments. The cognitive cost of being in noisy, busy, or complex environments rises. And the result is the characteristic increased sensitivity to stimulation and the fatigue that follows exposure to it, that many seniors notice and attribute to simply getting older or becoming more introverted. A study published in Psychological Science found that older adults who showed greater cognitive impairment from background noise, measured by their ability to perform memory tasks in noisy versus quiet environments, had significantly lower scores on measures of cognitive reserve and processing efficiency, and that the degree of noise sensitivity correlated with white matter integrity in prefrontal circuits. This sign is particularly significant because it represents a real world functional change, not just a change on a cognitive test. If you have noticed yourself avoiding previously enjoyable social environments because they feel too stimulating, too exhausting, or too disorienting, and this represents a change from your previous tolerance, this is a neurological observation worth discussing with your physician. Warning sign 6: spatial and navigation difficulties. The final sign is one I described in detail in my dementia warning signs video, but it deserves inclusion here as a specifically brain aging acceleration indicator that is separate from formal dementia. Have you noticed any of the following? Momentary confusion about which direction to turn in familiar places, difficulty remembering where you parked in a familiar lot, a sense of disorientation in environments you have navigated hundreds of times, taking wrong turns on routes you know well, and feeling genuinely confused rather than simply inattentive. The spatial navigation system of the brain, centered in the entorhinal cortex and hippocampus, is among the earliest regions affected by accelerating brain aging pathology. As I described in my dementia signs video, A, tau protein accumulation begins in the entorhinal cortex, the GPS of the brain, before spreading elsewhere. And the functional consequence of early entorhinal cortex involvement is exactly the subtle spatial navigation difficulty I am describing. What distinguishes this from normal aging is the quality of the disorientation. Occasional wrong turns from inattention are universal. The specific pattern I am describing is a brief but genuine confusion, where a person knows where they want to go, but momentarily cannot determine which direction gets them there, in a place they have been many times. The recovery is usually rapid, seconds to minutes, but the episode feels distinctly different from simple distraction. It feels like the map briefly disappeared. A study from University College London used GPS tracking to monitor navigation in older adults over several years and found measurable changes in route efficiency and directional decision making accuracy, an average of 6 years before formal dementia diagnosis. The spatial navigation system was failing silently in ways invisible to standard cognitive tests but measurable by GPS years before any clinical recognition. If you have experienced a pattern of spatial navigation episodes that feel like brief, genuine confusion rather than simple inattention, particularly in combination with other signs from this list, this pattern warrants formal neurological evaluation. Now, the most important part, because accelerated brain aging is not a fixed trajectory, it is a modifiable process, and the interventions that most powerfully slow it are available to every senior regardless of age, fitness level, or current cognitive status. Intervention 1: cardiovascular exercise. The single most evidence supported intervention for slowing brain aging is aerobic exercise. The mechanism involves multiple simultaneous pathways: increased cerebral blood flow, elevated BDNF production, reduced neuroinflammation, improved lymphatic function, and direct stimulation of neurogenesis in the hippocampus. A study from the University of British Columbia found that seniors who performed aerobic exercise 3 times per week for 6 months showed measurable increases in hippocampal volume, the brain's memory center, compared to those performing stretching alone. The aerobic group literally grew brain tissue while the control group continued to lose it. 20 to 30 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise, brisk walking, cycling, swimming, 3 to 5 times per week. This is the most powerful anti brain aging intervention available without a prescription. Intervention 2: sleep optimization. As I discussed in my sleep video, optimizing sleep quality is the most direct intervention available for improving lymphatic brain cleaning and reducing amyloid accumulation. The target is 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep, with adequate deep slow wave sleep and minimal fragmentation. Address sleep apnea, which impairs sleep quality and directly accelerates brain aging if it has not already been evaluated. Maintain consistent sleep and wake times. Create a sleep environment that is dark, cool, and quiet. And apply the 4-7-8 breathing technique from my breathing video as a pre sleep routine. Intervention 3, anti-inflammatory diet. Neuroinflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation inside brain tissue, is one of the primary drivers of accelerated brain aging. The dietary pattern most consistently associated with reduced neuroinflammation and slower brain aging is the MIND diet, the Mediterranean Dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay. The brain protective breakfast I described in my Alzheimer's prevention video, blueberries, eggs, extra virgin olive oil, walnuts, and green tea or coffee, addresses the dietary component of brain aging intervention directly and practically. Intervention 4, cognitive engagement. Learning new things, not repeating familiar activities, but genuinely learning, stimulates the formation of new neural connections and builds cognitive reserve. Learning a new language, playing a new instrument, taking a new course, engaging with genuinely challenging intellectual content. The key word is genuinely challenging. Completing familiar crossword puzzles does not build cognitive reserve, it exercises existing circuits. Learning something where you are genuinely struggling and making mistakes builds new circuits and strengthens the neural network that cognitive reserve depends on. Intervention 5, social connection. As I described in my Japanese longevity video, social isolation is as damaging to brain health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Meaningful, regular social connection, not superficial interaction, but genuine engagement with people who matter to you, provides cognitive stimulation, emotional regulation, stress buffering, and motivational support that directly protects against accelerated brain aging. The Moai model of lifelong social connection is not just a cultural practice, it is a neurological protection strategy backed by some of the strongest longevity data available. 5 steps, starting today. Action step 1, honestly assess yourself against the 6 signs: processing speed, sleep quality, mood changes, multitasking difficulty, noise sensitivity, spatial navigation. Write down which signs you recognize and for how long they have been present. Action step 2, if you recognize 3 or more signs, request a formal cognitive assessment from your physician this week. Ask specifically for the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, the MOCA, which is the most sensitive, brief screening tool for early cognitive change. And ask for blood work, including thyroid function, vitamin B12, vitamin D, and inflammatory markers, all of which are reversible contributors to accelerated brain aging. Action step 3, begin aerobic exercise this week, even 10 minutes daily, even a gentle walk. The brain responds to cardiovascular exercise faster than almost any other organ, with measurable improvements in cerebral blood flow detectable within weeks of beginning a regular program. Action step 4, implement one dietary change from the Brain Protective Breakfast video this week. Blueberries daily, extra virgin olive oil on every salad, a handful of walnuts with breakfast. Start with one, build from there. Action step 5, share this video today with family members who are noticing changes in someone they love, with friends who have mentioned feeling slower or less sharp, because the 6 signs I described are present in millions of seniors right now, being dismissed as normal aging when they are the brain's invitation to intervene while intervention still produces meaningful results. Your brain is the most complex structure in the known universe. 3 pounds of tissue containing 86 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections, a lifetime of accumulated knowledge, skill, relationship, memory, and meaning stored in patterns of electrical activity that constitute everything you are. It ages. Every brain does. That process cannot be stopped. But the rate at which it ages, the speed of the journey, that is something you have more influence over than most people realize, more than your genetics suggest, more than your age implies, more than any single medical intervention can provide. 6 signs, all observable, all meaningful, all invitations to change the rate rather than accept the destination. Check yourself against these signs, act on what you find. Give your brain the exercise, the sleep, the nutrition, the stimulation, and the connection that slow the biological clock that determines how old your brain actually is. Regardless of what your birth certificate says, subscribe to this channel for more senior specific, evidence based health information every week. Hit the like button if this made you think differently about your brain health. Leave a comment. Which of these 6 signs do you recognize in yourself or someone you love? Thank you for watching. Protect your brain. It is protecting everything that matters.